That's us, Philly's #1 college radio station, WHIP. 215-204-9449 is our number. Our next guest, I grew up watching him as a kid on SNY in New York. Chase did the same for Comcast here in Philadelphia. So let's go out to the phone lines right now and welcome in the very talented Matt Yallof from the MLB Network. Matt, it's Zach Gelb and Chase Sr. How are you?
I'm good, but now I'm depressed. You watched me as a kid?
We both did.
That's right. I guess you're getting a little bit older right now, but you still look good on television. There's nothing wrong with getting a few years older.
It's the miracle of makeup, I guess.
Yeah, right? All right, so let's get to the Philadelphia Phillies. This is a team that fired Charlie Manuel. That surprised a lot of people in this area because they expected Charlie, who won a World Series with this club, to at least last out the season. Ryan Sandberg comes in. Do you believe at the end of the year they will remove the interim tag from Sandberg?
Yeah, absolutely. I would expect that to happen. He's kind of been the manager in waiting for a little while, and he's not the kind of guy. I don't think you take a Hall of Famer, give him an interim job, and then all of a sudden take it away from him. He's the guy they want, and listen, these things run their course. You know, Charlie did an amazing job there. He's going to be in the history books as the most successful manager in Phillies history as far as postseason appearances are concerned. Sandberg is a different guy, for sure. It's a different feel. He's going to pay a lot more attention to things like being on time, guys being a little bit more in tune with with warming up and doing the things that sometimes fall by the wayside when a manager is on the job too long. People get comfortable, and it's like any job anywhere. You get a new boss, and people perk up a little bit. I would expect that to happen for sure.
Matt, Chase Sr. here. Thanks so much for joining us on the main event on WHIP, Philly's #1 college radio station. Since that Game 5 loss to the Cardinals in the division series in 2011, lack of production, inconsistent play, and injuries have plagued the Philadelphia Phillies. We all know what the media outlook on this team is in Philadelphia, but what's the national consensus on the Phils moving into the 2014 campaign and in the future years?
Well, I think that you nailed it. When they lost to the Cardinals, it's gone downhill. If you think about it, since they won the World Series in 2008, every single year they've exited earlier.
Yep.
It's pretty amazing, right? It's kind of an evolution of a team that gets old, and I think that's the consensus. It's an older team. The core is old. There's nothing you can do about it. The pitchers are getting older. The position players are older. Injuries happen. This is a different game now. Guys don't excel at 38, 39, 40 years old the way they used to for obvious reasons. Things are cleaner. They need to get younger, and they need to figure out a way to keep guys on the field. You know, the Utleys and the Howards of the world need to play. They need to play. They're being paid a ton of money. They need to complement the older players with young up-and-comers. It's tough to do while staying competitive, right? Because that's the balance. You don't want to mail it in. You don't want to say, all right, we're not going to be good for a few years. You got to keep the fans coming. It's still a fantastic fan base. You got to get younger. You got to get more versatile, and you got to get healthier. I think that's the national perception.
Matt Yallof joins us on the hotline, Philly's #1 college radio station, WHIP. And, Matt, that's why I was a little bit surprised when it came to that trading deadline that the Phillies didn't really make any moves and try to ship off a Cliff Lee, who's having a hell of a year, to try to get some prospects back in return. Chase Utley, they kept him on board as well. And no one wants to touch Ryan Howard because he's injured every year. So I think Ruben Amaro's in a tough spot right now.
He's in a really tough spot, and I kind of agree with you. I thought they were going to pull the trigger on a major deal and reload. You get two really good prospects for Cliff Lee. I think they could have done that. I'm not privy to everything that goes on in those meetings where they found out what they could or could not get. But the thinking is this. Cliff Lee is still a premier pitcher. And if you're going to be competitive next year, Roy Halladay's a question. Cole Hamels is going to bounce back. His second half has been much better than his first. Clearly, he's still a very good pitcher, and he's a left-hander and still fairly young. If you're going to be competitive, I think they thought they needed to have Lee. So the question became, what do you want to do? Do you want to reload and possibly say next year's a loss because without Lee you're probably not going to compete? Even with Lee, you didn't really compete. So tough spot for sure. I probably would have seen the writing on the wall last year and recognized that this team every year seems to be doing less and less. If I had my druthers and I'm in the driver's seat, I probably would have cleared Lee out of there, cleared salary, gotten a couple of top prospects back if possible, and looked to maybe 2 or 3 years down the road.
Sticking with the pitching staff, you mentioned Roy Halladay. He's currently 3-4 with a 7.19 ERA. He makes a start tonight against the San Diego Padres at Citizens Bank Park. Since he's come back from the DL, he's looked okay. He's lacked a little bit of velocity, but that's expected after a shoulder surgery. But his command has definitely been an issue, not just now, but also before he went on the DL. If you're Ruben Amaro Jr., the general manager of the Philadelphia Phillies, are you bringing back Roy Halladay if the dollar figure is a little bit smaller than what he's making now, or are you letting him walk and seeing the writing on the wall as well?
Well, I'm going to probably do something that entails a ton of incentives. I'm going to probably put conditions on it. It's got to be a certain number of starts. It's got to be a certain number of innings. It's got to be a certain number of whatever. Listen, when you're in your mid to late 30s, it's, like I said, things just aren't the way they used to be. The freaks of the world are Mariano Rivera. I mean, these guys, these are few and far between. What you're seeing here is a guy who has a lot of mileage on the tires. This is what happens. He's trying to come back from a shoulder. Very difficult to do. Many guys have not been able to do it. We've seen careers end because of it. His career is not over by any stretch of the imagination. I would probably say, listen, here's the thing. I didn't trade Cliff Lee for a reason. So it's almost as if I'm following my little flow chart here. If I didn't get rid of Cliff Lee, well, why am I now going to give up on Roy Halladay when I may be able to bring him back at a reasonable rate?
It's a good point.
I'm going to probably stick with him. He's not a 1 or a 2 right now. We know that. He's a 3 or a 4. He's a workhorse in terms of what he does to get ready to pitch. He's as competitive as any player I have ever been around. I want him. I want him on my team, but I have to surround my older players with young guys coming up through the ranks. It's funny. The Phillies have a ton of older guys, and there are teams that have too many young guys. You got to find that balance. You got to have both. And I think it's kind of interesting in that the teams that are really making the postseason pushes, you look around the league, for the most part, they have that combination. That's the way it is these days. You got to have the experience, but you also have to have guys who stay on the field.
Yeah, that combination between young and old is a little questionable right now. But Ryan Sandberg, since he's taken the reins of manager, has been putting guys in different positions, including Cody Ashe and Darren Ruff and Cesar Hernandez. What have you seen from especially those 3 young guys, and can they be a part of the big team when the team moves forward?
Absolutely, but you never know. Listen, I like what these guys are doing. I think there's talent, there's energy, and Ryan Sandberg's going to get the most out of his young players. I think that's a given. Everyone has different ways of motivating. He's going to get the most out of them. He's going to expect a lot because he expected a lot of himself when he played. And that's the way he rolls. I mean, he's not a guy who just throws the ball out on the field and says, guys, go have fun. He expects a lot from them. But here's my question. One is, what are these guys going to do in pressure situations? They really haven't played under the gun, these young players that you're talking about. And the other thing is, you can never assume players are going to be around when the team gets good, because you have no idea who gets traded or moved or demoted when you need to add a piece. So it's in the best interest of the Phillies to showcase these young players, get them some notoriety, get them some experience, and see what you need to do in order to field a team that is competitive. Because right now, this is not a playoff team. I mean, listen, we know that based on the record, but I'm basing it on other things. I'm basing it on the competition around them. There are a lot of very good teams right now in Major League Baseball. More in the American League, for sure, than the National League, but there's a huge gap in the National League. The haves and the have-nots, there's a very big difference. And right now, and I would imagine next year as well, the Phillies are going to be a have-not.
Matt Yallof from the MLB Network joins us. Gelb and Chase here with you for the main event on WHIP. Matt, looking at the rest of the National League here, the thing that really intrigued me was the starting pitching and the whole Cy Young race. Matt Harvey and Kershaw looked like they were going 1 and 2 for that possible award, but then Harvey went down with the possible Tommy John surgery that's looming in his way. But looking at Kershaw, people are already penciling him in for the Cy Young. Can you also see him possibly winning the MVP as well?
That's a great question. Oh, boy. I'm reluctant with starting pitchers. I don't see him winning the MVP, and I'll tell you why. I think he's hands down the Cy Young. I don't even think that's a discussion. And I think he was even before Harvey got hurt, to be perfectly frank. He's a better pitcher. and he's pitching in situations that Harvey was never pitching in, and that is meaningful pressure games. MVP award. I think the problem is going to be for Kershaw in that regard is that there's a wonderful story going on in Pittsburgh. And what happens when these stories emerge and we see these new kids on the block kind of thing is that people, listen, it's a human vote. This is not a machine spitting out these results. People tend to have a soft spot for good stories. And Andrew McCutchen is not only a face of the game, but a great guy on a team that is doing something that you guys may not even have seen in your lifetime. I mean, think about it. It's been 21 years since they've been in the postseason. So there's an entire generation of fans who've never seen this before. Voters are human. Voters tend to go sometimes. When I say tend and then I say sometimes, I'm kind of contradicting myself. There can be occasions when voters go with the great story and they may overlook other things. I think Yadier Molina has a really good chance of being the MVP. McCutchen has a good chance. Shouldn't overlook Freddie Freeman in Atlanta as well. That lineup has suffered major slumps, and he has been the one consistent force.
Now, transitioning to the American League real quick, Miguel Cabrera's numbers for his career are a .321 average, and he has 364 home runs. It seems as though he's been around forever, but this guy's only 30 years old. He looks to be wrapping up another MVP award. Is he already vaulting himself into one of the greatest players of all time? Because what he's been doing the last couple of years is just absolutely ridiculous.
He's there. He's there. He's one of the best hitters ever to play the game of baseball. There's no question about it. And when you look at him against Albert Pujols in his prime, which goes back a couple of years now, I think that you could make the case they're as good as each other, maybe Cabrera even a little bit better in certain areas. This man is not human. He is doing things, he does things with such ease and such consistency that there are guys who played Major League Baseball who say he's not playing the same game they played. Can you imagine what that means to people who never came close to playing Major League Baseball? That's how good he is. He has a big problem right now, though, is that he's not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And the Tigers have a problem on their hands if he's not healthy. They haven't wrapped up anything yet. They'll win the division, but without Miguel Cabrera, there is no way they're winning the World Series.
Matt, absolutely fantastic stuff. And before we let you run, I do some work with the television station here and anchor the Sportscast. Our executive producer is actually Matt Fine, who you worked with at Comcast Sportsnet. He told me to pass you along a hello.
That's very nice. Tell Matt I said hello. Great times in Philadelphia. Great time in my life. Great time in my career. Loved it there. Still the best sports city. Better than New York in many ways.
Oh, come on. I'm a New Yorker, Matt. That raises a lot of problems with me, Matt.
Listen to me. I'm going to give it to you. This is why I say
good cheesesteaks.
This is what I say. When you have one team in every sport, you galvanize a city in a way that New York can never be galvanized. You will always have people who don't care what the Yankees are doing, or people who do not care what the New York Giants are doing. They'll look, they'll watch, but they deep down don't care. You don't find that in Philadelphia. That's what I mean. Great, great sports city. Miss it all the time, and I appreciate you guys having me.
So where do you get your cheesesteaks since you're a big Philadelphia guy?
No, man, that's the old menu. I can't do that anymore. when you go past 40, you can't eat that stuff.
Well, Matt, we really appreciate the time. Thanks a million, and let's talk to you again real soon.
My pleasure, guys. Take care.